Minerva Mills Ltd versus Union of India 1980. Is the power of the Parliament to amend the Constitution limited by the Constitution? Should there be a balance between fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy? Minerva Mills case held that the harmony and balance between fundamental rights and directive principles is an essential feature of the basic structure of the Constitution. It restored the power of the court to review any amendment to the Constitution. Minerva Mills Ltd was a textile production company. In 1970, the central government appointed a committee under Section 15 of the Industries Development Regulation Act 1951 to investigate the affairs of the Minerva Mills. The government was of the opinion that there had been a substantial fall in the volume of production of the mill. On the basis of this report, the government passed an order under Section 18A of the Industries Development Regulation Act 1951, authorizing the National Textile Corporation Limited to take over the management of the Minerva Mills. The order was based on the grounds that the affairs of the mills are being managed in a manner highly detrimental to the public interest. Minerva Mill was nationalized and taken over by the central government under the provisions of the Sikh Textile Undertakings, which is Nationalization Act 1974. Minerva Mill and other petitioners challenged the following in the Supreme Court. First, the constitutional validity of certain provisions of the Sikh Textile Undertakings Nationalization Act 1974. Second, the government order that authorized the National Textile Corporation Limited to take over the management of the Minerva Mills. Third, the constitutionality of the Constitution, which inserted the Nationalization Act as entry 105 in the 9th schedule to the Constitution. Fourth, the validity of Article 31B of the Constitution. And fifth, constitutionality of Sections 4 and 55 of the Constitution, 42nd Amendment Act 1976. Petitioners challenged the constitutionality of Sections 4 and 55 of the Constitution, 42nd Amendment Act 1976 on the grounds that though by Article 368 of the Constitution, Parliament is given the power to amend the Constitution, the power cannot be exercised so as to damage the basic features of the Constitution or so as to destroy its basic structure. The petitioners also challenged the constitutionality of the Constitution, which was 39th Amendment Act, which inserted the Sikh Textile Undertakings Nationalization Act 1974 as entry 105 in the 9th schedule to the Constitution. They also challenged the primacy given to the directive principles of state policy contained in Part 4 over the fundamental rights conferred by Part 3 of the Constitution. They argued that Section 55 of the Constitution, 42nd Amendment Act, deprived them of their right to seek legal remedies as the concerned section bars the judicial review. On the other hand, the respondents argued that the provisions of the 42nd Amendment of the Constitution, which deprived the fundamental rights of their supremacy and made them subordinate to the directive principles of state policy, are ultra vires the amending power of Parliament. The Union of India argued that securing the implementation of directive principles by the elimination of obstructive legal procedures cannot ever be said to destroy or damage the basic features of the Constitution. Further, laws made for securing the objectives of Part 4 would necessarily be in the public interest. The judgment. The Supreme Court held that the introduced Clause 5 of Article 368 transgresses the limitation on the amending power of Parliament and hence unconstitutional. Clause 5 of the Article 368 removed all limitations on the amending power of the Parliament, and Clause 4 deprived the courts of their power to review any amendment to the Constitution. The court opinioned that if courts are totally deprived of the power to review, the fundamental rights conferred upon the people will become a more adornment because rights without remedies are as writ in water. Clause 4 of Article 368 totally deprives the citizens of a right guaranteed under Article 32. Directive principles of state policy are fundamental in the governance of the country. Part 3 and 4 together constitute the core of the commitment to social revolution, and they together are the conscience of the Constitution. the Supreme Court held that the harmony and balance between fundamental rights and directive principles is an essential feature of the basic structure of the Constitution. The Apex Court in Minerva Mills case held some of the provisions of the 42nd Amendment Act as unconstitutional and thus saved the democracy from turning into a totalitarian state. The Minerva Mills case substantiated the basic structure doctrine by holding the balance between fundamental rights and directive principles as being a part of the basic structure of the Constitution.